The problem with politics, my sister there has been asking me, how are you going to handle? Isn't DP really getting weaker? I said, but which party is stronger? PLU is stronger than all the other parties in Uganda, and yet it is not a party. Why did I come here? I am Mukasa Fred Mbidde. I'm the Deputy President of the Democratic Party. I am an advocate of all courts of judicature. I know that PLU means business. At the risk of being misinterpreted and misunderstood by my own brother, PLU, I find it ideologically aligned under what we call the theanthropos. I think Pastor Jingo knows this. Theanthropos is an understanding that actually Jesus is God. That he is only an incarnation as a human being that represented God. And after service, he went back and became God. So when you see a son, it is very possible that he can be God by virtue of the ideological theanthropos. So that is why I can be here. So when you see people talking about this in the equation, then you should know it is philosophical and religious in nature. That is why I came here. If you are born in Uganda, you are Ugandan by birth. That is a principle we must quickly establish for the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda by amending Article 10. First of all, material to do with diaspora has been ably discussed. I'm only going to do a recap. I found also a few people also giving clear guidelines on what they feel the country should do. Let us first of all understand what is the faucet or ego of somebody being established as a diaspora member. What is the objective reason that makes it a logical necessity for anybody to become a member of the diaspora? Because we know that historically, Ugandans never wanted to go anywhere. In fact, they were always taken in chains and given titles of slaves. Today, we know that once you obtain a visa to the United States or UK, you even celebrate. So there must be some reason why people go. Once you get the exact reason why people go anywhere, then you will need to know the role government needs to play in order to maintain them there safely. A frog does not jump into the road in broad daylight unless something is against its life. That is the understanding traditionally. Meaning, once one decides to go abroad, that must be harnessed by the country in order to obtain what the country needs. I have had here statistics given that 1.5 billion United States dollars is the contribution by diaspora to the economy of Uganda. But when you look at the UNDP report, it is indicated that we have got 2 million members of the diaspora from Uganda. Now, that divided among us the 1.5 billion, the meaning is that only $750 is what is contributed by every member to Uganda. What does that mean? The country is not doing what it should in order to harness the existence of diaspora as a body that should establish what we would have called the economic Gestapos for Uganda. It is not true, whoever is here, that your contribution is only $750 the whole year. Clearly, that means that statistics available are mere gestapeds. We need to do what we have to do. They are gestapeds and speculative in nature. The country needs to do something better. Going abroad, that is one thing. I have had one of the people establishing notions that make it, they are innuendos that almost indicate that going abroad at the subconscious level of the analysis given, there is an innuendo understanding that probably you have done something wrong. Now, Uganda needs to do the following. Number one, negotiate bilaterals between the receiving entities and us, the exporting entities. Labor, just like all the four factors of production, carries a price. Land carries its own price in terms of rent and substantive value. Entrepreneurship carries its own price in terms of dividends and profits. Capital, in terms of profit. Labor, in terms of wages and salaries. All the four factors of production can be exported. So there is no crime in labor export and externalization. The crime is the quality and the character in which you export the same. When we look at bilateral agreements between Uganda, for example, and Saudi Arabia, I am looking forward to a component that is arbitral in nature and an establishment of a tribunal procedure for those that have suffered wrongs by the buying entity. That is the negotiation I'm looking forward to by government. Because the law in Saudi Arabia is to the effect that a non-nation cannot practice law in Saudi Arabia. Clearly, I do not have legal services as an advocate that I can give to anybody that has suffered a wrong before a Saudi Arabian employer. Now, the Saudi lawyer cannot guarantee that there is going to be justice that is enough, that can be given and subtended to a Ugandan against a Saudi national. Therefore, the negotiating entities need to have as a logical possibility provisions within such agreements that provide, among others, the likelihood of establishment of a tribunal for settlement of wrongs committed against Ugandans. Now, without that, obviously, no negotiation has been done. And that is where, otherwise, even here in Uganda, we have got labor settlement arbitral mechanisms, meaning even employers in Uganda, at some point in time, occasionally wrongs against their employees, and vice versa. So that must be subtended even under the export nature of our own labor externalization. Why did I come here? I am Mukasa Fred Mbidde. I'm the Deputy President of the Democratic Party. I am an advocate of all courts of judicature. I know that PLU means business. At the risk of being misinterpreted and misunderstood by my own brother, PLU, I find it ideologically aligned under what we call the theanthropos. I think Pastor Bujingo knows this. Theanthropos is an understanding that actually Jesus is God, that he is only an incarnation as a human being that represented God, and after service, he went back and became God. So when you see a son, it is very possible that he can be God by virtue of the ideological theanthropos. So that is why I can be here. So when you see people talking about this in the equation, then you should know it is philosophical and religious in nature. That is why I came here. I am closely associated with PLU, and because I know that this is governance. A lot of people don't even understand politics. First of all, I can tell you that there are countries that have democracy without themselves being countries. We have democracy in Somaliland, but it is struggling to be recognized as a country by other states. But there is democracy. You can have good governance without elections. That is why we are talking of Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and some other countries. There is good governance and there are no elections. You can also have elections without democracy. For example, if you can look at the manner in which votes are counted, if the counting official is appointed by a candidate, then you know what shall be established is a democratula, a dictablanda, or an apertura democratica, not a democracy. So, for us, for me, when I look at PLU, I know this is a proper incarnation of the best practices for the future of Uganda. I definitely associate myself with it under that regard. So, members, I have heard this. What does it mean to have members who are Ugandans in other countries as the labor force called the diaspora? When you look at 1966, for example, and I would like to discuss this succinctly. By 1966, Britain had 2 million teachers of the English language all over the world. Today, almost over 3/4 of the whole world speak English as a method and a language of communication, which is a marketing antique for Britain and all British products. In fact, in East Africa, Uganda sings our own national anthem in English. It does not matter whether it is understood by 20% of Ugandans. It is national. So patriotically, we need to come up with a proper idea of how we should sing our own national anthem. So I don't know how national 20% can be, but I think we need to think forward and better in terms of that area. So if Britain used the 2 million teachers to teach the English language to the whole world, how can we use the 2 million laborers outside Uganda for us to become a substantive labor force and an economic base that is established for Uganda by Ugandans out of Uganda in the near future? That is something we must have to look at. They used the 2 million teachers and established English as a method of communication for the whole world. We can use 2 million workers and establish a substantive labor force as an economic Gestapo, a secret police in economics for Uganda. We need to do a lot, and very fast. When you look at the GDP per capita, Uganda is still lagging behind and nobody is telling you. But when Zambia is between $1,500 per year, and Uganda is at 950, then you know we are still lagging behind somewhere in terms of statistics. We need to work hard. It is the diaspora that has to be harnessed. Uganda must establish a mechanism of identifying. That is called identification of diaspora members. It cannot be the individual role of a member or a Ugandan to introduce himself or herself to the entities that are governing Uganda. No, they are entities that must be supported and paid using taxpayers' money to establish a cross-sectional counting structure of all Ugandans all over the world, so that we first of all get to know who they are. That is number one. Where they are, that is number two. How to harness their existence. And all programs emanating in Uganda, especially economic programs, must have to be programs that are cross-cutting, including diaspora members. That can be done. There are countries that have established. Our ambassador here has just told you about, I think, one country. That's Ethiopia. We have got Senegal. We have got Mauritius. We have got Ghana. We have got South Africa. We have got Nigeria. These are countries that are taking it extremely serious, that the diaspora is a component part of the body economic of their own countries. And they are harnessing it to a level that is actually incomprehensible in nature. Uganda is not an island, and that is something that we need to do as quickly as practicable. So, diaspora, you are the future of Uganda. Immigration, I have had people also struggling to explain immigration procedures and, of course, problems under citizenship. That a Ugandan who obtains another citizenship automatically loses citizenship of the country. That is like a bicycle. It is lethargic, and it must be definitely amended as quickly as possible. Article 10 of the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda. You see, we must adopt two major principles, international principles on citizenship. Number one, the jus soli principle. Now, that principle predetermines that you are a son, a daughter of the soil where you were born. That is number one. That if you are born in Uganda, you are Ugandan by birth. That is the principle we must quickly establish for the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda by amending Article 10. We are not alone. It has been adopted in countries like Kenya. In Kenya, we have got ethnic communities that are called Somalis, Pakistanis, and Indian is also emanating from the Zambia, Pemba, and the Mafia Archipelago. Archipelago is just a group of islands. That's the English language. You see, I'm being accused, the doctor, of using the English language, but he told me I must speak at a lower altitude properly. And I think that is what I have done. I don't want to risk not being invited again. I love this because this is the way forward. Kenya adopted the jus soli principle in their constitution. Tanzania adopted the same. African Union has simply passed a resolution. I think it was in February or March. Mr. Myanga Lutaya knows some of these things. That forbids anybody under the African Charter on Human and People's Rights from being declared stateless. But Uganda's law is to the extent that we have 6 million people who are stateless. Why? Because we do not appreciate the jus soli principle. The only principle being adopted is the jus sanguinis, where you are a citizen of a country by birth, merely because of citizenship of either of the parents. Now, that one is adopted in France, but we must adopt principles that are adopted in the United States. Of course, Mr. Trump wants to amend a few of these things, but he needs to amend the Constitution. He cannot succeed. Those are international principles, and they are principles that have been guaranteed even under the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So nobody can be able, he has to kowtow to the established standards that he found there, because that is exactly what is required of a president of the United States. So here in Uganda, we must amend the law in order to assist immigration, to also assist diaspora into remaining citizens of Uganda, but clandestinely also working to make sure that all resources are repatriated to Uganda, other than Uganda becoming a roundabout of resources to other countries. How does it become a roundabout? A wage labor and immigration policy is not established here in Uganda. In Uganda, you can have a Chinese who is an investor. He establishes a factory and obviously, ultimately becomes a managing director. The general manager, of course, is one of the relatives also from China. The cashier is actually a sister or a daughter. And that what Ugandans can do is to be the ones carrying the bells of what has been produced to the lorry, but even the person counting the bells is a Chinese. Now, if you establish things to that extent, then we are failing what we would have called an investment procedure which would have assisted Uganda. The investment procedure assisting Uganda must not be foreign direct investment in an area where Uganda has got a direct access to a foreign market. That is number one. We must establish a wage labor and immigration policy that you industrialize Uganda by introducing an industrialist, but the labor force is actually about Ugandans. We need that as a policy. Number two, foreign direct investment cannot be established in an area where we have a direct access to a foreign market. For example, you have got a market of African growth and opportunity, a market where you can export your coffee directly to any of the other markets. How would you invite a foreign direct investor in such an area? That is an area where you must use to establish an indigenous-based economy for indigenous persons and for Ugandans to invest. That is where we again need also to focus. That way, the diaspora that has had exposure to management and investment mechanisms abroad will be in a position now to invest home, because they are labor laws, they are laws of investment that actually are protectionist in nature and would help them flourish in their investment ventures. Number three, you should not allow foreign direct investment in a food market. How can you allow a foreign direct investor to invest in an area which is food in nature? You can remember, I think we have had cataclysms in South Africa before, where Massmart was being bought by Walmart. South Africans agitated, rioted on the streets that they would not allow anybody who is a foreigner to invest in the food market. Because clearly, Massmart is selling oranges, is selling everything produced as food in South Africa. Those are areas where you must only assist in indigenous investments so that they can flourish, and there we can be competitive in nature in terms of world scale. But you don't allow competition by a foreign direct investor in an area which is definitely should have been a preserve of indigenous investment. So members, these are areas that for me I would like to focus on. The diaspora, if you don't know how many there are, you don't know how to handle them and what to do for them. So I personally prefer governance to politics. I am here because you have established an intent to discuss governance issues. This is something that I would always want, and this is the way to go. Otherwise, politics is divisive, and for us in the country, we still have a problem with politics. My sister there has been asking me, how are you going to handle Isn't DP really getting weaker? I said, but which party is stronger? PLU is stronger than all the other parties in Uganda, and yet it is not a party. So you can imagine. Yes, so for me, I think this is the amorphous way to go, that you can discuss what would have been discussed by those that are not discussing it, so that you can be able to do what they are not doing the moment you get to do what they would have done. So that is what we must focus on. In Uganda, the low relative political maturity, even of those that are serving us, is of course also subtending a very big problem. We must focus on who we are. That is the best way we can definitely develop who we should have been, that we are not. If you do not know what you want, at least be in a position to tell what you don't want. We don't want to treat the diaspora like one of the mathematicians. You see, we were told that a mathematics teacher found one of his former students. He wanted to be directed to one of the streets that he was eager to go to, so that he can take his literal savings to one of the thrift organizations at that street. And when he found the students, he said, "Hey, you young people, can you direct me to where this bank is?"
This opportunity to welcome you to our today's function, and I have no doubt in my mind that this function will, at the end of the day, not only benefit whoever is here, but the whole country at large. By way of flashback, Patriotic League of Uganda did not come from heaven. We started as small units. Those of you who may still remember, we had units like Team Chairman, MK Army, Avengers, Revolutionary Guards, Agoji, and others. When these units started picking the heat, had various discussions, the conversation started, and most of the people joined us. When the whole idea became big, through the wisdom of our chairman, Gen.Muhoozi, he advised us to unite. We later on united and formed the mighty MK movement, where we are all advised that we should promote that brand of MK movement. We appreciate whatever you all did. Then we later on decided, we transited from MK movement to Patriotic League of Uganda, which is a fully registered civic organization that is non-denominational, non-partisan, and non-sectarian. We welcome everybody, despite our political affiliations. For us, we are not a political party, but you never know what might happen in the future. But at the moment, we are a civic organization. And one of our core values is promote patriotism. So the reason as to why we have organized this function is to inculcate into you that wherever you are, don't forget your country. Love your country, remember your roots, and do whatever it takes to ensure that you can walk your head high when your country is stable and peaceful. We have a thinking that for the first time, we would like to see a peaceful and orderly transition. This is something we cannot hide our heads in the sand. We must prepare for a peaceful and orderly transition. And the responsibility lies with nobody else but us as Ugandans, wherever you are. And I hope this will be part of our discussion, our conversation tonight. So I will not take much of your time. My job was very simple, to welcome you to our today's discussion, so that we first give the opportunity to our discussants. They first take us through what they have prepared for us. Then thereafter, we can start networking and discussing, see how far we can take Patriotic League of Uganda to another level. Thank you so much. I wish you fruitful discussion.